Hello, I'm going to give everyone just a few minutes to get logged in and get settled before I start the webinar completely. But while we're waiting on everyone to join us tonight, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Treva Schaus. I am a BCBA, which is a board certified behavior analyst with Bierman. And tonight I'm going to be discussing our webinar topic, which is a discussion on change, helping your child navigate changes that arise due to holidays, vacations, or changes in routines. So we'll start with a little housekeeping at first and go over how our webinar series works, and then we'll get right into the topic tonight. So our mission is to provide support to you, your child, and your whole family. So this process is about making daily life easier for your child and everyone involved in your child's life. So using behavior analytic research and science to guide our decisions on what to teach and how to teach it. While this is important, it can also be intimidating to understand, and we are here to help break it down. We also want to collaborate and make your experience meaningful. So we want this information to be helpful and useful to you. And we also want your input and feedback throughout the process. So please never hesitate to reach out to anyone on our team for support. So for communication via Zoom, participation is strongly encouraged and can help you relate to the content and apply it to your daily life. So there are a few different options for communication via Zoom. The easiest is to just use the chat function, and there's two different options within the chat function. You can chat directly to me in the panelist option, or you can chat to panelists and attendees, and everyone will be able to see your response in that instance. Everyone's muted. I can't see you, nor can anyone see any of you as well. I will be pausing frequently to ask some questions, to take some polls. We're just trying to make this as active as possible. And it's just easiest if we all just stick to the chat rather than the raising hand. If I do see someone raise hands, I might just encourage you to use the chat function as well. We are going to take our first poll. So bear with me while I launch it. So I'll go ahead and launch it. And if you guys could just respond, and I will read the poll right now. So how much experience do you have with ABA? So one option is no previous ABA experience. Another is less than 3 months of ABA experience, so a newer client, or a new client, excuse me. 3 months to 1 year of ABA experience, a newer client, and then more than 1 year of ABA experience, a seasoned client. So I'll give you guys just a few seconds to respond to that. You guys are responding so quickly. I'll go ahead and end the poll now, and I'm going to share the results with you. So you'll see that we kind of have a little bit across the board with experience, and that's great. That just kind of helps me see where to guide some of our discussion of the webinar. So thank you so much for participating with that. All right. We're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. Our objectives of this webinar tonight are to seek to understand your child's barriers during routine changes, vacations, and or holidays, learn strategies to help your child cope with routine changes, vacations, and or holidays, and then to identify resources that are available to you when preparing for a routine change, vacation, or holiday. So why can routine be important to a person with autism? So let's first discuss why routine could be, and I want to emphasize could, because I want to preference that everyone with autism is different. So change can be difficult to someone, but not someone else. We are not saying that everyone with autism has difficulty with change. Some might, and some might have difficulty with change in some aspects or situations, but not others. But why can change in routine be difficult? Routine provides stability, and it can provide the ability to anticipate what will happen next. So what aspects of change could be difficult for your child? Your child may seek repetition, so any activity that is not practiced on a regular basis could seem overwhelming. Your child also may be extremely sensitive to specific changes in detail. So an example would be going a different way in the car, wearing different clothing, eating unfamiliar foods, smelling unfamiliar smells. Your child may have communication deficits that impede their ability to talk to you about their feelings or concerns. And we'll go over these in a little bit more depth throughout the webinar as well. So it's likely that your child is not going to easily transition into every new situation, routine, or environment without preparation. So then some things we're going to talk about within our webinar tonight are some visual supports, teaching your child to communicate their needs, repetition and practice, and then reinforcement as well. So change is good. While change can be difficult for an individual with autism, it can be much more manageable with the proper supports in place. And I mentioned these on the previous slides, but I want you guys to think of an example too. Think of your typical nightly routine. Typically, you're not attending a webinar with Bierman ABA at night, but you change your routine to learn something new tonight. So change is good in this aspect. But if you were so rigid in your nightly routine that you couldn't attend a webinar, you would not be contacting the information that I'm telling you tonight. So let's take one more poll. Which does your child struggle with the most? I'll go ahead and launch the poll and then I'll talk through that as well. So which does your child struggle with the most? Is it any routine change, holidays, vacations, holidays and vacations, or maybe all of the above? And I'll give you guys a few seconds to vote, and then I'll share the results as well. And again, this is just more information for me on where to spend a little bit more time on the webinar based on what you guys are telling me. I'll give one more second on that one. All right, and I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results with you guys. So it looks like we have a little bit more that are any routine change, some with vacations and some with all of the above, which is great because we will be discussing all of those tonight. So thank you so much for your participation with that. I will stop sharing and then we'll move on to the next slide. We have one more poll. So how difficult are routine changes, vacations, or holidays for your child? So let me launch that poll real fast. Okay. So my child does not like them, but can adapt pretty easily. My child does not like them and it affects the next few minutes. My child does not like them and it affects the next few hours. My child does not like them and it could affect the rest of the day. And my child does not like them and it could affect multiple days. And I'll give you guys just a few more seconds to respond to this one. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll and I will share the results. So it looks like we have some that will affect the next few hours, some that could affect multiple days, and some that could affect the rest of the day. Thank you guys so much for sharing that. And we'll go over that a little bit more within the webinar as well. So in the chat, I'd like for you to share a specific example of something that your child struggles with in relation to routines, vacations, or holidays. So I do want to give the caveat not to use any names or any identifying information in this, and it could be something really, really simple. So I'm going to model a response in the chat that would apply to my 2-year-old. So I would just put vacation time because that's something she struggles with. And I would put the specific example of time in the car. So if you guys could just give me a quick chat of some things. And if you want it to go just directly to me and not the whole group, remember you can just chat it directly to panelists and just let me know if you don't want me to read it too, that's totally fine. And if you would like it to go to the whole group, you can do panelists and attendees. So again, I'll go ahead and put my example too in the chat box as a model for you guys as well. I could put vacation and then I could put time in the car, which is the change that she has the most difficulty with. Okay, great. All right, we have some information too about vacations. All right, awesome. Thank you guys for your participation. Changes in the after school routine. Thank you. Changes in routine. Okay. All right. So we have some strategies to talk through tonight that will hopefully give you guys a little bit more information. So the first thing we're going to talk about are visual supports. So there are many things you can do to prepare your child for a change. And we'll start with identifying some visual supports that could help your child understand the change that is about to occur, as well as support your child during the change. I'm going to look at my chat real fast because I'm getting some more. Okay. All right, great. Thank you guys so much for your chats. I will try to address those within the webinar as well. The first thing we're going to talk about is social stories. It's important to understand there are many factors that need to be considered when using a social story or any of the visual supports that we're going to mention, such as your child's ability to understand the language and supports used in the story, as well as other factors that are beyond the scope of this webinar. So this webinar is just going to give you more of a definition of the visual supports, but it's important to reach out to a member of your child's team, such as your clinical director or your child's behavior analyst, for specific guidance on recommendations on using a social story before implementing it. And again, if this is appropriate for your child, and if they have the specific component skills that would be successful for that. But social stories can, if used appropriately with those caveats in mind, help your child prepare for changes in advance, allow your child to visualize what will happen, provide suggestions about how to respond, and can be individualized for a specific change or to suit your child's need. So we're just going to go over one example of a social story. So this would be one that targets change in routine for a child. So this has all of the visual supports here, and then it talks about the change in routine. So you'll see the first part of the social story says, at school, we have a routine or things we normally do in order every day. However, some days our routines might change or something unexpected happens. And then it talks about strategies that can be employed in that situation, such as keeping calm. It's okay to feel upset about the change, but I must have a calm body and use a calm voice. I can tell my teacher this makes me upset, but I know I will be okay, et cetera, on your social story. But again, it's important to relate it to the specific change. It would be important to practice the change in a role play format, read and practice after the change occurs, coaching, modeling. Please reach out to your child's clinical team before implementing, though, because there's a lot of different skills that would be specific to your child before you would want to implement this strategy. Let's talk about picture schedules. So picture schedules provide structure and predictability. They supplement verbal instructions for individuals with expressive or receptive communication deficits. They allow change to be introduced easily, and they provide a visual reference of the events to come. So here's an example of Anna's day. So on the far left, on this example right here, you will see that she had 3 subject areas for the day or for her visual schedule. So in life, we can't always predict every single change that will happen. So the middle schedule, this one right here, shows a visual schedule that has a change icon. So this will visually show the child that there is a change occurring in the day and that they will go to the purple center second for a change activity. So that schedule change, so that's indicating that visually. So the instructor can prepare the child by letting them visually know that a change is going to occur. And then in the example on the right, there's a schedule change that is going to occur. Instead of going to writing, the child will go to art today. So this schedule is simple to make. This looks like it was made with Velcro and icons that can be changed depending on the schedule of the day. And a simple drawing or schedule with written text could also be used depending on your child's skill set. Again, this is where it's important to consult with your child's clinical team to help develop an effective picture schedule and to talk through if your child has the component skills that would be successful for that visual schedule to be implemented, or that picture schedule. Here's another example of a way that you could structure a visual schedule. this is looking at a morning routine. So you could put wake up, get dressed, breakfast, or brush teeth. But I do want to emphasize that sometimes in life, we don't have that things change as well. So a way that you could do that is one of your icons could be a question mark as the activity, so they can't anticipate that. So that would be similar to that previous slide where they had the change icon and then they didn't specifically say what the change was. It was just a purple square. So if we were doing a question mark in this schedule, maybe we did wake up and then the question mark was the second one. So they couldn't anticipate the change. But a great way of easing into this change would be to make sure the question mark activity is always fun and preferred for your child at first. So the question mark can be conditioned as something good. And then as your child learns to tolerate the question mark, you can make the activity a mix of preferred and semi-preferred tasks. That way you can condition that change and that unpredictability a little bit more too within a visual schedule or a picture schedule format. Here's an example of an all-day visual schedule. This is where you could use a question mark or a change in schedule if you have to change the route or the actual visual on the schedule throughout the day, because changes in life do happen. It is a little bit more difficult to make an entire day because you have to really plan out every single thing that's going to happen throughout the day. So keep that in mind. It might be easier to do just a portion of the day. Again, this is where it's important to consult with your child's clinical team on what would be appropriate. Let's talk about video modeling. So this can allow the individual to visualize the events to come in a real life example, and it can be used as a self-modeling tool as well. So the video we're going to look at is how you can go through airport security. So your child could watch this video and practice it with you before going onto an airplane. Again, it is important to work with your clinical team before implementing to make sure this is a good strategy for your child. So your child might not have the component skills needed to use this or for the strategy to be effective, such as imitation of a video model, recalling information, attending to a video model, or following multi-step directions, just to name a few. So your clinical team can help guide you in this situation. But I will stop sharing my screen for just a second, and I am going to share that video. Oh. Hold on just a second. Okay. All right. And here is the video.
Sometimes I might go through a different kind of machine at security. Take a look.
Right on the yellow footprints, arms in the air, face forward.
When I go through security, I might go through a different kind of machine.
Okay.
Watch me.
Next. Feet on the footprints, arms in the air.
This is easy.
Come on out.
I just do what the TSA agent tells me to do.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. The next video I want to show you guys is an example of how to open presents at a birthday party. So this is something that you could practice with your child before an upcoming birthday party. So we're going to look at the next video example together, and then I'll talk through it afterwards. Oh, excuse me, there we go.
Look at the camera. Thank you. Hi. What's your name?
Hello. Hello, my name is Nightly.
Today, we're going to learn how to open presents.
Wow.
We wait with calm hands and feet for our turn to open presents. It's time to open presents.
Presents.
If there's a card, we open and read the card first. Then we can open the gift. If we need help, we can just ask.
Can you help me, please? Help. Me. Please.
Once it's open, we always say thank you to the person who gave it. First, we look in their eyes, smile, and then say thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.
Whatever gift you get, it's still good to look in their eyes, smile, and say thank you.
Thanks.
So again, you got to see a lot of different modes of communication there. You had vocal speakers, you had kiddos that were doing sign language, and then device using as well. The next example I'm going to show you is to do with a holiday example. So this would look at Christmas, and then we'll discuss that together as well.
Merry Christmas.
Little doctor. See different clips I have of him doing that.
Hello, my name is Nightly. This is Cadbury.
Let's celebrate Christmas. On December 25, it's Christmas. There's no school. We're on break. We will put up decorations and wrap gifts. At Christmas, we will see family and friends. We may drive and visit another home, or they may come visit our home. When we see people, it's nice to look in their eyes and say, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We may wave, hug, or give a kiss. We will pray.
Thank you, Lord, for Jesus Christ who was born today, thousands of years ago.
And eat together. We may take pictures. We keep calm hands and feet when we take pictures. We may sing Christmas songs.
So again, those are just a few examples. So it's important to realize, let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen and start sharing my PowerPoint again. Bear with me just a second. Oh goodness, sorry. I might have to go through. I apologize. So it's important to realize those are just examples. If you don't see something that's already made that would be applicable to either a scenario that your child is going to experience or not applicable to your child's skill set, you can always make your own video model or continue to work on component skills. And I had mentioned a few earlier with your child's clinical team, but please reach out to your child's clinical team before assistance and guidance for this as well. The next support we're going to discuss are visual timers. So we're going to go ahead and read this example. So it is spring break and you are driving to the beach for the week. You know it is a long drive and you anticipate that your child may have a difficult time. You know it will take you exactly 12 hours to get to the beach. So you set a visual timer to have displayed in the front of the car so your child knows how much time is left in the car. So this is an example of how you can incorporate a visual timer into your vacation. So you'll remember that I had talked about that this is a barrier for my child, so I'm anxious to try this one as well. You can always pause the timer if you have to stop on your vacation, but a visual timer will give your child a visual representation of how long is left. Again, the same caveat as the other interventions apply that I have mentioned. So it's important that your child would have the component skills of number awareness and a visual countdown for this to be effective. But you can also use other visual timers. There's ones that have like a red part that would go smaller and smaller as it got closer to time. So your child might have that within their repertoire as well. But again, reach out to your child's clinical team for guidance. Let's go ahead and read this example. So on Tuesdays, you and your child go from school straight to grandma's house. Your child looks forward to this every Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, but you have to run to the store to get some food before heading to grandma's house. When you pick your child up from school, you inform him of this change in the schedule. You just have to run in to get a quick couple of things. So when you get to the store, you set a timer for 5 minutes, showing your child how long until you get back in the car and go to grandma's house. So again, this is an example of how a visual schedule could be incorporated into a change in routine. And this could also be combined with a visual schedule, such as having a picture of the school and then a picture of the grocery store, and then set a visual timer for the store, then a picture of grandma's house as well. So this is how these interventions could be combined together if appropriate for your child. So let's read one more example. It is your child's birthday and you are hosting a birthday party for him. He does not enjoy large groups of people and gets very upset at a group of people singing. Right before it is time for everyone to sing, you prepare your child for the event. An example, we are about to sing happy birthday since you are blowing out your candles, but this song only lasts 1 minute. I'm going to set this timer for 1 minute, and when the timer goes off, the singing will be done. So you could also work up to this by working on desensitization before the birthday party, setting a timer and only having your child tolerate a few seconds of singing and working up to it, or incorporating a preferred special item for when singing occurs too, to kind of pair that singing with something preferred as well. Again, this is where it's important to work with your child's clinical team as well. There are visual timers on apps too that are very child friendly that visually show them how long until an event will occur too. That might be appropriate for your child if they don't have number sense as well. So we're going to take one more poll, and this one says, is your child familiar with any of the following supports? So let me go ahead and launch the poll and we can talk through that. So is your child familiar with any of the following supports? Social stories, visual schedules, video modeling, and visual timers. I'll give you guys a few seconds to respond and then I'll go ahead and share the results. And then we'll move on to the next part of our webinar, which will discuss communication. All right, I will end the poll and I'll launch the results so you guys can see. So some participants are familiar with social stories and visual schedules, and some are familiar with video modeling and visual timers too. Great. Thank you for your participation with that. All right, so now we're going to talk about communication during routine changes. So communication, putting a focus on communication helps your child learn to manage change by improving their ability to self-advocate, defining the emotion or feeling they are having, and helping them understand the coping strategies that are available. If a child is able to advocate for their feelings and desires in a calm, appropriate way, helping them to identify coping strategies will be more effective and easier for them to understand. Now we're going to talk about identifying the barriers. So every child is different, so the communication styles and needs of each child will be different too. Whether your child communicates vocally, with a device, with sign language, or with gestures, there are ways we can teach them to ask for the things they want and need. You know your child's communication better than anyone, so you will likely be able to anticipate things that might be tough for them when it comes to a change in routine. So first, you will want to identify any barriers that you think your child could have a hard time with. So some examples that I've identified are having to wait or sit for longer periods of time, food being presented in a new way or a new environment, being around new people, new sensory stimuli such as texture, smells, sounds, visiting a new or crowded environment, or a delay in reinforcement. And we'll talk about these more in the upcoming slides. Before we do that, let's talk about identifying any other barriers that your child might struggle with. And then you could specify within the chat too, whether the barrier would be during a routine change, vacation, or holiday. So I will go ahead and model a response if you guys would like to put your answers within the chat. Again, if you want just me to see, make sure to just put panelists. And if you would like to share with the entire group, you can go ahead and put panelists and attendees as well. So I will model a response to a routine change, and this has to from so an example would be a routine change to going home a different way. So maybe you took a different route. Another example could be food presented in a different way. So maybe I always present chicken nuggets to my child, and then today I presented them cut up rather than full. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to think on that too, and I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide as well, when we talk a little bit more about priorities. So identifying priorities. So let's first think of if the change is a have to situation. So is it something your child has to do? If so, then let's work on it. And then if not, pick your battles. So maybe it's something that can be targeted at another time or later on. So here are some examples, and I'll talk through those in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and reference my chat really fast. Okay, thank you guys for your participation. I'm just going to read through the answers really fast. All right, so we have some examples too about some changes too. Okay, great. Some other examples too that we'll talk about within identifying priorities are staying seated for a long car ride. So staying seated in a moving car is a have to. So clearly you have to do that. So breaking up a long car ride with breaks is a way that we can make this change easier and more manageable. So thinking about, do we have to do this change? And in that situation, we would have to do it. But that's a way that we can maybe make that better for the child as well. Another example would be wearing a costume while trick-or-treating. So that would be a change related to a holiday. So wearing a costume for trick-or-treating, although it's nice to have for pictures, it's not absolutely necessary. So perhaps a different costume or not all of the costumes, such as not having the whole costume, but wearing the hat could be a good way to go about this, or working on desensitization a few weeks prior to Halloween. And maybe your child could also pick the costume too to incorporate choice. So in that instance, they could pick the costume, they could wear just a part of the costume, or you could work up to the whole costume. So that goes into that repetition and practice that we've talked through too. And then we'll talk about a little bit more towards the end of the webinar as well. So eating at a restaurant, or sorry, excuse me, saying thank you for every present received at a birthday party. So maybe just a thank you at the end if your child has difficulty saying thank you after every present or approaching every single person at the birthday party would be a way that could be helpful with this if you would like to start there, if that's a harder skill for your child. Another change would be eating at a restaurant. So we could work on getting to a point where your child is eating a whole meal at a typical sit-down restaurant, but maybe takeout or a restaurant that is a faster option would be better starting out. So we could start smaller, contact success, and then make it to those longer restaurant opportunities as well. Staying in a stroller at the zoo. So we could investigate a wagon or working on safety skills of holding hands or following directions of stop, come here, or stay by me if the stroller is difficult, or pairing a stroller with something preferred, such as a favorite stuffed animal. We could also work up to having a stroller at the entire duration of the zoo, but maybe we just target a certain part of the zoo at first, or maybe we target a stroller in a different environment as well. So here are some ways that you could prompt the language now that we've identified some of the barriers. So it would depend on the situation or the function or the reason of the behavior, but some examples could be advocating for a break. So if you had a vocal speaker, you could prompt, can I have a minute? I need a break or break. If they communicate via sign language, you could prompt that language as well. You could also prompt it with a gesture, such as a palm up for a break, or you could prompt it on a communication device as well. Maybe doing things in a different way. So can I try a different one, or I want a new choice, or something just as similar as or as simple as different or my way could be ways that your child could advocate. And we want to make sure that we're able to reinforce these requests too when your child is successful with those as well. Advocating for more time with an activity. So can we stay here longer, or one more minute? Let's come back tomorrow. I don't want to leave yet. Device speakers, I touched on that a little bit on the past slide, but any new icons, and then you can practice using them. So if you don't know how to add new icons, reach out to your clinical team, your speech therapist for help with that as well. But you could add pages for certain activities. So you might remember in that video model, they had added quite a few different icons, or they had, if they were hidden, then they unhid them. To do with that specific holiday or that specific event as well. So an example could be vacation. So you could have a car ride page, a hotel page, a beach page, a restaurant page. You could practice that too. So your child would be more likely to be successful as well. An example of a holiday could be the birthday party, similar to the video model that we watched, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving. And adding any of those icons that could help as well. So something that is helpful as well is to provide choices. So sometimes you can allow your child to feel more control while achieving the same outcome. So this would be an example of getting to the same place by offering choices. So would you like A or B for dinner? So if you're thinking of dinner as something that you have to do, so that might be a change that occurs. Maybe you're eating dinner at a different time. Maybe dinner is a little bit different. It's in a different environment that day. So there's a change occurring. Maybe you could provide a choice. So you're still getting that same outcome of eating dinner, but you're saying, hey, would you like A or B for dinner? So you're offering two choices, but you're still getting that same outcome of eating dinner. Another example to do with a vacation would be, we're going to the beach. Are you going to swim or play in the sand? So you're still going to the beach, but giving a choice of an activity that you can do. So everyone's at the beach, but you could swim or you can play in the sand. So it's time to go to your grandma's for Thanksgiving. So we're still going to grandma's, but do you want to eat turkey with everyone else, or shall I bring some chicken for you? So if that change of going to grandma's is a bigger change that's going to be more difficult, then maybe bringing something different or offering a choice in that situation that could help. So you could eat turkey or you can eat chicken. So you're still going to be eating Thanksgiving dinner at grandma's as the end choice. So it's time to put on shoes. Would you like to wear the blue ones or the black ones today? So the end goal here is to get out of the house with shoes on. So offering that choice as well. Another choice you could offer is, it's time to put on shoes. Do you want to put on this shoe or this shoe, and showing the right or the left foot. So making the change easier. So we talked through this a little bit, but some examples would be for trick-or-treating. So in a holiday example, maybe you could visit just a few houses a night for the week leading up to Halloween. Then on Halloween, you may be able to visit houses in the whole neighborhood. So maybe you could practice that with a family friend or a relative, and you can practice with your child on knocking on the door, saying trick or treat, and holding up a bucket. You could also work on that desensitization of wearing the costume, or maybe wearing a part of the costume too. Also, looking at sleeping in a new place. This is a bigger change. So allowing your child to practice sleeping in other rooms of the house. So this could allow your child to adjust to a new sleeping arrangement in the comfort of their own home before they have to adjust to the new sleeping arrangement away from home. Eating at a restaurant. So visiting a restaurant just to sit in the waiting area without ordering. And then once your child is used to the environment, you can work up to eating at a fast food restaurant or a restaurant with a quick turnaround, and then a sit down restaurant. So using reinforcement, this is huge in our field, providing a preferred item for tolerating a new situation or following directions. So in this example, your child walked into the grocery store without flopping to the floor. And this is a big deal because typically your child does flop to the floor. So any time that you change the schedule and go to the grocery store. So you provide him with praise and his favorite treat, a Skittle. You continue giving him one Skittle at a time throughout the outing as he follows your direction. So in this example, this child did not tolerate even going into the grocery store with a change in his routine. So they are providing reinforcement immediately following that good desired behavior that we would want to see. In the second example, your child does not enjoy putting on sunscreen. To help with this, you give her access to her favorite show as you put it on and pause the show if she leaves the sunscreen area. You give her longer time with the show when she is allowing you to put on the sunscreen. So remember, your child should have access to preferred items when they are engaging in appropriate behavior. Repetition and practice. This is what we've referenced throughout the webinar, but we're going to talk about it in more detail now as well. One way to prepare your child for any change in routine is frequent exposure. So if you can make the environment or activity more routine, then the change will be less significant. So you could visit the environment, you can expose your child to the sensory stimuli they may encounter, or you can practice changing up the schedule frequently to avoid rigidity. So that references the question mark that I had talked about within the visual schedule slide as well. So another example of this would be if you went a different route home from an event or changed an event that you normally do, such as going to a different breakfast place, going on a walk with a different trail, those type of things as well. All right. So let's talk about how we can put this all together. Let's look at an example first. Eddie's mom has to go out of town for work, so his grandparents will be picking him up and dropping him off at school each day. The only other time Eddie was dropped off by someone other than his mom, he refused to come in the building. So this is clearly a situation that Eddie's not used to, so let's think of some ways that we can help him. The first thing I would suggest is to practice Eddie's grandparents picking up or dropping off with mom before it's time for them to do that job by themselves. So we could pair mom with grandparents too, leading up to this change. This could ensure that the grandparents understand key aspects of Eddie's routine with mom and could also allow Eddie to associate them with the transition process. If Eddie uses a visual schedule, you could also make an icon for the grandparents so that Eddie is aware of the change in his routine and can prepare for it. While there are other supports that could also work for the scenario, remember that your BCBA is available and eager to help create individualized supports for these situations that are going to be tailored to your child. So you can rely on their knowledge and help with identifying specific supports that could be helpful. So let's look at one more example. It's spring breaks and Cora's family is going to Florida to the beach. Cora has some sensory aversions to different texture and has also never flown on an airplane before. So both of these environments will be new to Cora, and both of these are going to be changes. So it's going to be important to identify the specific aspects of the trip that might be most difficult for her so we can practice them. Based on this information, it seems like she might need the most preparation for the airport and the airplane, and also possibly the sandy texture. So to start, you could begin introducing Cora to sand sensory bins at home or at the center, and she can begin getting used to that texture with her hands before she has to tolerate it at the beach. For the airport, you could create a visual schedule, making her aware of all the things that she would have to experience in the order that she would experience them as well. And try to think of things that would be the most challenging, such as waiting in line at security, remaining seated on the airplane, or the loud noises that she might hear. And you could also reach out to your local airport to see if there's any sensory friendly times that you could go to the airport and practice. And I actually have a resource on an upcoming slide that might be helpful for that as well. Each child is going to be different. So if this example is a situation that could be relevant to your child, make sure you reach out to your BCBA or your clinical team too for some help and guidance with that as well. So our last example is it's 4th of July and you are taking your child or your family to the local park to watch the fireworks. Your child flops to the floor, screams, and starts kicking when he hears unfamiliar noises. He does also not like fire or bright lights. So in this situation, we've already pinpointed some of the barriers for this child. So it'd be great if you could find a picture support or a visual support that outlines all of the aspects that they would see within that 4th of July scenario. So you could also bring some helpful materials such as covering his ears with his hands or headphones, advocating to leave or move further away in that situation. You could also watch some videos of fireworks or light them individually at home if that would be appropriate before the event so that your child can start getting used to the lights and sounds. You could also look at some preferred items that might have some lights that you could have within the home too to kind of work on that beforehand as well. Here are some resources, and you guys will have access to this this PowerPoint within a recording as well. But some visual supports, you can always reach out to your BCBA for help with designing any of those visual supports if they are appropriate. But again, just as I've mentioned multiple times, make sure to reach out to your clinical team because they will be able to guide you on if that would be an appropriate support for your child based on their component skills and any that might be missing. Community resources. There is a website called Wings for Autism. It's more of a simulated airport and airplane experience. So like during a Wings event, you can do participant activities, check in to receive boarding passes, pass through the TSA security checkpoint, wait in the boarding area, and even board an aircraft that doesn't take off. Now, I don't know with COVID restrictions if this is available right now, but that is the resource in case you guys want to check it out. And then Autism Speaks has some basic resources and travel tips for individuals with autism, and that's the website there. And then you can always check out local businesses that might have autism or sensory friendly options that could relate to your needs as well. So some webinar frequently asked questions is, will this webinar be recorded? And it is recorded and a link is sent to you a few days after the webinar with the link to Bierman's YouTube channel where we house all of our caregiver webinar series. And that kind of goes into the next question. Can I access previous webinars? You can. All of our previous webinars are on the Bierman parent YouTube channel as well. And a link to this is also sent within that email that I'll send following up within the next few days. I do want to make a plug for our future webinars. So all of our webinars are at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and here are our upcoming ones. So June 2nd is Introduction to ABA. So this just gives a general overview of what ABA is. June 16th is an expansion on play, so creating purposeful teaching opportunities for your child within play. July 6th is another introduction to ABA webinar. So all of our intro to ABAs are pretty similar. So if you've gone to one, it's pretty similar to all of our other ones. However, this one will also have an introduction to speech and language services too. So feel free to check that one out too. We'll have a speech pathologist with us that can answer some of your questions regarding introduction to speech services. And then July 21st, we're going to have encouraging peer and sibling play interactions for your child with autism. And then at the end of this webinar, you'll just have a quick multiple choice questionnaire. And if none of these topics, or if you would like to add to any topics that you think would be interest to you or to other members of your family, feel free to add that on there too, and we can take that into account to some of our future webinars as well. So the key takeaways of this webinar are to identify any barriers that your child has to change. You can use visual supports, you can prompt communication. It's important to practice and repeat, and then reach out to your, I put BCBA, but also your child's clinical team for help. And then going along with that, who can you contact with further questions? So any families on our wait list currently, if they're participating in our interim care service, you can contact the BCBA that's working with you. If you're not in our interim care program, you can contact your center's clinical lead or your clinical director, excuse me. Current clients, feel free to contact your child's BCBA, especially if you have any questions about anything to do with the webinar and how it's going to relate specifically to your child. Any prospective clients, they can reach out to info@biermanaba.com about the next step in the intake process, or you can email me at treva@biermanaba.com with any questions about the content of tonight's webinar as well. And then I will be the one that's sending you the follow-up email as well. So per the behavior analyst code, ethical code, I can't answer a question specifically related to a scenario with your child in terms of change, just because I don't have all of the information to make a proper analysis. But you can contact these individuals with further questions about child-specific questions. But I would like to open the floor to have you guys ask any questions that you had about the content of tonight's webinar. And if I can answer it, then I will definitely answer it within this webinar. And if I can't, I will direct you to the person that can answer it as well. So I'll go ahead and open the floor. Thank you guys so much for your participation tonight within the chat, within the polls. I really appreciate you guys coming to our webinar as well. And I'll stay around just for a little bit longer too to see if anybody has any other questions too about anything to do with change. If questions do come up after the fact too, feel free to shoot me an email as well. Thank you guys so much for your thank yous within the chat. We really appreciate you coming to the webinars and your participation. I hope to see you guys in our future webinars as well within our caregiver webinar series. And again, I will exit the webinar too. And when you do exit the webinar, then you can always add more input feedback on future webinars as well. I did have a really great question of where can you find places to make picture schedules? That's a really, really great question. So in that situation, what I would do is I would advise you, if you're a current client, to reach out to your child's center and they can help you with that, with making a picture schedule that would be appropriate for a specific scenario or a specific situation with your child. And they do have more of the materials to make those picture schedules too, in terms of if you're wanting lamination, Velcro, those type of things. However, you can make simple picture schedules as well. It just really depends on what would be the most appropriate for your child. You can do drawings if your child would respond to that. You could do textual picture schedules too, where you just write the words out. So it really just depends on what would be the most appropriate for your child. So I would reach out to your child's clinical team and get their input and then see the next steps with that too. But it doesn't need to be anything fancy as long as your child can follow it and it's an effective support. That's really what you're looking for. All right. Well, I will go ahead and end the webinar. Again, if any questions come up, please email them to me. And then you can also email any of these, your child's current BCBA, the clinical director if you're on the wait list, or your child's BCBA if you're in the interim care program. And again, I just want to thank you so much for your participation and for attending tonight. And I hope you have a great rest of your night. Thank you.